Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice, Sylvester Lynn, welcomes you to a brand new edition of Between the Links. Thank you for joining us today, the second to last day of March. Spring is in the air, and today we're kind of shooting the breeze on BTL. We're coming off UFC San Antonio, no UFC event this weekend. We're on the road to UFC 287 next Saturday in Miami. But lots still going on in the combat sports world this weekend, and we'll discuss that and much more. Today, it is myself, and joining me in this venture is Mr. No Gray Area, the Exhibition King, co-host of No Bets Barred, and Damn They Were Good. A great episode of Damn is now on the Pod Network, going through the interesting and underappreciated career of Benson Henderson. Let us say hello to Jed Meshew from MMAfighting.com. What do you think about that particular website, Jed?
It's a great website, and you are correct. There is a episode dropped yesterday, the latest one for Damn They Were Good. Honestly, one of the more fun ones. Benson Henderson, not like one of my personal favorites. Like, I respected his career, but wasn't like a huge fan. And as we dug into it, I feel like I remembered a lot. I learned a lot. Good time was had by all, and well worth your time. So if you got a long drive, fire it up, because we got plenty of content for you on that show.
We definitely do. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk about the big story from UFC San Antonio. Let's talk about Cory Sandhagen, Jed. He puts on a show. Everybody who witnessed this fight believed that it was a dominant performance. Everybody was extremely impressed by Cory Sandhagen, except for apparently Judge Joel Ojeda. He saw a completely different fight than everybody else in the world. Egregiously scores the final 3 rounds for Chito Vera, and we'll talk about that more in depth shortly. But Jed, thoughts on Cory Sandhagen's performance and how he handled his business against a very tough opponent in Marlon Chito Vera?
I mean, he looked great. I said it on the night, and I will stand by this. It was disappointing, not in that, I mean, the performance was exceptional, but I think many came into this being, expecting a potential fight of the year, a really thrilling, exciting battle. And it's not really what we got. And that's a full credit to Cory Sandhagen, who kind of talked like he just said the dopest shit after that fight, frankly. Like, he's got a really good analytical mind. And he was just like, yeah, we knew what we were going to do. We had a plan. Chito talks about wanting it more, but we all want it the same level at this level. We all want it the same. So it's about the other parts and doing it. And we felt pretty good. And that's what we did. And that's what you saw. And so it ended up not being this kind of blood and guts affair, which I think a lot of us hoped for. Certainly I thought we were going to, maybe not the whole fight, but I thought we'd get a lot more of it. But instead, Sandhagen really just kind of dissected him. And it proved that Cory Sandhagen is who re-solidifies himself as one of the very best bantamweights in the world. And there's a world where he is the best guy, right? Like, I mean, he got run over by Aljamain Sterling, and when they fought, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get speed bagged, If they fought again, I would probably still pick Sterling based on how that first fight went, but I wouldn't pick it to go the same way. And it wouldn't at all surprise me if Cory Sandhagen could beat Aljamain Sterling, if he could win a rematch with Petr Yan, particularly given kind of the tough scenes Petr Yan has had to endure the last couple of times out. And, Cory Sandhagen versus Henry Cejudo, like, he's got a fair shot against anybody in the top of this division. And he just proved it by kind of really blanking arguably the most dangerous guy in this division. So great win from Cory Sandhagen. Makes me kind of reevaluate just how good he is as a bantamweight. Is he better than top 5? And makes me interested to see him continue to push for a title.
Yeah. What's funny is I couldn't wait for this show following this performance, because a while back you were on this very program after Rob Font beat Cody Garbrandt, and you said, you know what? Rob Font might be the best bantamweight in the world. Yeah, you said that very confidently. That was something that you continued to say for several months after. He might have been.
He wasn't, but he could have been.
Do you have those same vibes after this performance? Are you feeling like this dude's he might be the best? Like I'm confident
A
he
little
might be the
bit.
best bantamweight in the world. Yeah.
A little bit, like he definitely could be. And again, like I don't know that he would win any of those rematches, but I know that he would have a chance to win all of them, like better than a puncher's chance. Or like he is a complete, well-rounded, analytical mixed martial artist with uh, a unique maybe isn't the right word, but a game that a lot of the other dudes at the top of the division don't have, and that can present problems to those same guys. So, look, Piotr Jan beat him not that long ago in a really fun fight where Cory Sandhagen had his moments, and if they ran it back, Cory Sandhagen could make adjustments because we've seen him approach the fight game that way. Aljamain Sterling, like I said, like maybe Aljo tackles him, backpacks him, and wraps him up. I just don't think it happens the same way. He's going to have to work a lot harder, and Cory Sandhagen's getting better. So I'm not willing to call him the best bantamweight in the world right now, but he, on any given day, he could win the belt, and that's about as good as you can ever aspire to be in this sport. And I think Cory Sandhagen is pretty definitively, at least for me, cemented himself in that legitimate title threat conversation.
Sandhagen told our own Damon Martin prior to the fight that he had a plan of some kind, or he was developing some sort of plan to call out Sean O'Malley if all went well on Saturday, and all went very well for him Saturday. He didn't do that, which I thought was very smart. He instead calls out Merab Dvalishvili, and he did it very respectfully. He put Merab over as sort of the boogeyman in this division, the toughest fight he could possibly have right now. And Merab, of course, seemed into it, as he should, since the UFC is offering him Umar Nurmagomedov on May 13th. They may still offer him that fight in the future, but Sandhagen calling out Merab, I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. What did you think? Was that the way to go for Sandhagen, or should he have tried to shoot the O'Malley shot with everything kind of up in the air at 135 right now?
No, 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 no. God, no. He pitched perfect. Like he did this. He was perfect on Saturday from start to finish. I mean, you could maybe give Cheeto that last round if you want to. Like, it's fine, but he was perfect in everything. His post-fight speech, his call out, all of it was exactly correct because that is the right call out for him. Merab Dvalishvili is honestly, actually, if I had a gun to my head, I would say Merab Dvalishvili is the best bantamweight on earth right now, and so that's a really tough fight to call out. But that's the fight for Sandhagen to take or to pursue because it is achievable, and it then also sets him up for the thing that he wants. If he tries to call out Sean O'Malley, he's just not getting it. Like that's just Sean O'Malley is going to wait. It's functionally what's going to happen. I strongly doubt that he will be like, I just want to fight again. Well, thing like he's getting the next title shot. He's just going to wait. The UFC will have no issue having him sit to fight for the belt against the winner of Aljo Cejudo. So calling him out is a waste of a call out. It will never happen. If he doesn't call out Merab, if Cory Sandhagen, tried to pursue that, tried to just call for a title fight or some other nonsense that we've seen some people do, then we talked about it coming into the fight. Then he's probably getting the winner of Adrian Yanez, Rob Font, which is a fun ass fight, and sign me up and watch the hell out of it. But that's fighting back in a it's a real way. Font's several stations back from his ranking at this point. This is the ideal fight. It's tough as hell. Merab Dvalishvili is impossible to fight functionally. But if Cory Sandhagen can win it, he's number one contender with the bullet. He gets that fight and he can win it. He gets a title shot. It doesn't really matter what else is going on in the bantamweight division at that point. He will have solidified himself. So it's a hard ass fight, but this is absolutely the correct call out from him. And I think he's going to end up getting it. I think this fight makes the most sense for Merab, who's going to have to fight again. Also won't get O'Malley. God knows who wants to fight Umar Nurmagomedov. Like that is just at best you are going to win an extremely difficult fight over a guy who is not ranked very highly. So I think he's going to get it. I think the call out was great. Literally a perfect Saturday from Cory Sandhagen. Could not have drawn it up much better than he got.
Tough night for Marlon Vera. 4 wins in a row heading into the fight. His usual game plan of let's get an opening, let the guy hit me with a hammer, and then I'm going to just come back and hit him with the sledgehammer. Didn't work here. He didn't get going at all. He had some moments in the third and fourth round, but Cory was just too much for him. And he's only 30, so hopefully he'll learn from this. I'm sure Jason Perillo has been all over him since Saturday, but what's next for him? I mean, he called out Petr Yan. Certainly makes sense from a ranking standpoint, but is that the fight to make? What do you think is the future, at least short term, looks like for Marlon Vera right now?
I think that's the fight they are going to make. I'm not sure it's the fight I want. Don't get me wrong, the fight's great. I don't love Marlon Vera's chances in that fight. I'm not saying he can't win it, but it's certainly going to be a 5-rounder. And the way Petr Yan's offense builds on itself, like we have seen realistically the way to beat Petr Yan, and you are going to have to outwork him and just overload him. And Marlon Vera is very much not that kind of fighter. So I think that sets up poorly for him, though the fight is still probably really fun. Because I mean, Yan got caught a couple of times by O'Malley. Marlon Vera is better than that. I think in general, I would prefer he not fight Petr Yan, because again, we start to get into the neighborhood of squatting, which we've talked about with other divisions. But when we're talking about Sandhagen fighting Dvalishvili and Yan fighting Vera, that's and O'Malley waiting for the winner of Sterling Cejudo. That's the whole top 5 booked, right? Like that's everybody in the top 5 functionally is now covered. So then it's these other guys who are coming up, the Umar Nurmagomedovs, the Adrian Yanez's, that group is being functionally boxed out of upward mobility, which I'm never a huge fan of. I've always sort of been of the idea that if you take a loss, you need to fight back. And this wasn't a controversial loss. He takes a loss, you need to fight back and defend your spot, and then you can go back to it. So I'd love if instead we got to see Marlon Vera versus the winner of that Rob Font Adrian Yanez fight. Sign me the hell up for that one. Absolute banger alert. But I think we're going to get Petr Yan, and it's hard to be mad about that because that fight is certainly fun as hell, if nothing else. It does potentially run the risk for Petr Yan of losing like 8 in a row or something insane at this point, which would be a tough scenes for our guy, but that's life in the bantamweight division, baby.
Who is your low-key MVP of UFC San Antonio, Jed?
Ooh, let me look at this card and remember, because I was not working this event. So Nate Landwehr doesn't count as low-key, does he?
I mean, it's not the main event, so I don't know who else you could pick, really.
He's the MVP of the card. I'm not certain he can. I just don't think he can constitute low-key. That's probably the low-key MVP of this card. Here's who the low-key one is for you. And I disagreed with this on Fight Night, and I still disagree with it, but it delivered something really cool. And it's Jason Herzog, because CJ Vergara that fight should have been stopped. I know Casey disagrees with me. I fundamentally believe that the CJ Vergara Daniel Silva fight should have been stopped. Because if at any point in time you are literally fleeing, like turning your back and running away, I got this a lot because I commented this. I agree. That is totally intelligent defense. In fact, running away is arguably the best defense for any fist fight. The problem is you're no longer fist fighting. You're in a track meet. And those are two very different things. So it's certainly intelligent defense, but you are actively disengaging from combat, which is the whole point of this thing. It is, by definition, timidity and should warrant a foul and a point deduction. I mean, that certainly didn't happen. But for me, I have just always been of the opinion that if you are ever in a position where you literally are running away, then the fight's over. That running away is far worse to me than turtling up. Like they're the same thing of strictly defending yourself with whatever limited means you have capable at you. So I think that fight should have been stopped. However, because it wasn't stopped, we got a really sick comeback. Like CJ Vergara manages to not, get knocked unconscious, makes it to the end of the round, and then comes out and barnstorms in the second. So the low-key hero of this fight card is Jason Herzog. Even though I think it's one of the few times that I fundamentally disagree with what Jason Herzog did as a referee, it did deliver us probably the second best highlight. I mean, honestly, just the best highlight. It's better than Landwehr Lingo. So the best single moment of the event was because of Jason Herzog. So shouts to you, Herzog.
There you go. And it's not often when we think back of this past weekend that we're giving kudos to a referee. So let's transition to...
Look, he's the best ref in the game. He missed on this one, but it was a happy accident, so it works out.
We mentioned Judge Joel Ojeda, and there are other judges who were Texas-based with weird cards throughout the night. But this is a pretty tough weekend for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, Jed Meshew. The TDLR, the commission overseeing UFC San Antonio. Also, the Fury FC 73 card on Friday, also in San Antonio. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this right now, everybody who's listening to the sound of my voice, has seen the viral clip. Edgar Chairez, Contender Series veteran, likely down 3 rounds in the main event of Fury FC 73. He's fighting Gianni Vasquez in a 5-round fight. He did miss weight, first time he ever missed weight, but that's kind of besides the point because Vasquez is winning the first 3 rounds. Round 4 starts. Vasquez, as he had done a couple of other times in the fight, picked Chairez up, threw him on the mat, and then finds himself in a nasty figure forward triangle. And Vasquez clearly goes unconscious. Everybody sees it in the arena, except for the referee, Frank Collazo, who just allows this submission to continue while everybody is screaming at him to stop the fight. Chairez transitions to a nasty armbar to the unconscious Vasquez, whose arm is getting hyperextended. He wakes up. He tries to tap with his foot. Then he goes out again. He wakes up again and eventually works his way to tapping out. Now, Collazo, who was very much in the public eye on Saturday, probably millions of people had seen this clip by Saturday afternoon. He is rewarded with a judging assignment at UFC San Antonio, and this is just friggin' ridiculous. So, Jed, Texas has been under scrutiny many times before. This just put it over the top. How bad of a weekend was this for the TDLR in San Antonio, the site of both the UFC event on Saturday and that Fury FC event on Friday?
It's tough, Hanks. It's just Texas is on some whole other ish. Look, I don't know how to feel about him getting rebooked as the thing. It's obviously not like a good optics or whatever, but at the same time, it's not the same job. So kind of whatever on it. The awful ref stoppage is like far more important to me than anything else to happen because it's really, really bad. It's actually the worst I've ever seen in the sport, I think. Like there's just not really a credible way that to me, and I'm not in the cage, but it's very hard for me to imagine looking at that and being like, this should continue. We should let this go on. Like you gotta have some baseline level of ability here. And it really feels like the referee did not. As far as the judging, I mean, it's the worst scorecard I've ever seen. It's not the actual worst scorecard I've ever seen, but it's top 5. So heroic efforts from Texas to be, because the part that is, I won't even say concerning because it's not, or just know how this game works at this point. There will be no ramifications either way. And that's the part that sucks and is super lame, right? Because things don't get better when there's no incentive for them to get better. Like they will just continue existing in perpetuity because this is not Texas's first rodeo with this kind of clown shoe shit. So it's just going to keep happening because they don't seem to really have any huge impetus to improve. And that's a shame, but the UFC will still probably go to, Texas once every couple of years because they've got a lot of the major markets in the country.
Maybe just stay away from San Antonio. You don't have to deal with a lot of this stuff. Because, I mean, like Frank Collazo ain't reffing fights in Dallas. Like he'll ref fights in San Antonio, judge fights in San Antonio. I don't think he's just making the Johnson Dallas. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But when you saw that clip on Saturday, like, what did you think of it? Were you like throwing shit across the room? Because I was.
No, I was just like, wow, that's really bad. Because it was really bad. Like I don't get all that up in arms about things all that often anymore. In this, because I'm sad to say, like, grown to expect it, right? Like, this is just part and parcel of the sport. It is why it is. It's frankly, partly why it's a dangerous sport. Outside of everything else about what you are doing in organized combat, there are a lot of inept people that are involved structurally at every stretch of it. And so, look, like, I'm not here to put any blame on Vasquez. Like, I'm not here to put any blame on him. But this should serve as a lesson to other people. This is why you tap. You should just tap. There is no honor or dignity in going to sleep, because there's a scenario where you don't wake up for no reason because somebody else is bad at their job. Like, you should just tap. Should have just tapped. The ref should stop it. And this is a dangerous game, and you shouldn't have idiots working dangerous games. And sadly, it's where we are. And so I was happy that he seems to mostly be okay, which is obviously the best outcome. But man, it just sucked all around. There's no good thing about this.
Yeah, hopefully he's okay. Not really sure. But breaking down the fourth wall, I have something cooking with this whole entire thing. I'm sure some people have done interviews about it, but no one's going to go as in depth with this whole saga as we are. As you'll see and hear over the coming days, the story has
That's why we're a great website.
Way more layers than I thought. Many roads to take with it. It's absolute insanity. So stay tuned for that over the next several days. But while many hold the California State Athletic Commission as sort of the gold standard for commissions right now, with Andy Foster at the helm, is Texas the complete opposite right now, Jed? Can you confidently say this is the worst commission in combat sports right now?
I mean, I can't say confidently, just because there are a ton of them that we don't know anything about, right? Like, when was the last time an event was held in Idaho? I know, man. Like, UFC isn't going to Butte, Montana or whatever all that often. So, like, there could be Boise, worse out there.
Hasn't the UFC been to Boise? Wasn't there a UFC Boise not that long ago?
Maybe. I mean, it couldn't have been recently because COVID. So by not long ago, you mean like 5 years ago, potentially. But like, I can't recall all of them.
2018.
Yeah. Okay. Literally 5 years ago. But Texas is certainly at the nexus of being catastrophically bad and frequent. It's just, I mean, they probably are. It's hard to imagine a commission being much worse, but also it wouldn't shock me if South Dakota or some other state that they don't go to is terrible, and we just don't know because they have 2 events a year for some Midwestern smoker show or whatever. But I mean, it's a safe bet. If you're just placing money, they're the odds-on favorite to be considered the worst commission.
Minus 150 or higher?
Oh, much higher than that, because people know, because they also have the perception of being so bad. But yeah, I mean, I can't say it all the way confidently because the UFC hasn't gone to every state recently or whatever. And we're not going to get, like, how often is Fury FC or whatever competing in, I don't know, Minnesota? I just don't know. But if I wouldn't feel bad saying it, like, it's probably not wrong.
Well, there you go. So that's that. More on this whole saga coming up on MMAfighting.com. Stay tuned. But another thing happened at UFC San Antonio, which has caused a little bit of a debate, Jed. I didn't think it would, but it has caused a little bit of a debate on Heck of a Morning and other shows. A very cool announcement during Saturday's broadcast. Donald Cerrone, Cowboy, is heading to the UFC Hall of Fame. He's part of this class of 2023, which includes Jens Pulver, Jose Aldo, Anderson Silva, and now Donald Cerrone. And most people are very happy about this. I thought the moment was very cool. He was very emotional about it, and it brought his significant other and his kids out. I thought it was very, very cool. The highlight package, the UFC does a tremendous job with that stuff. But it has created a little bit of a debate. A lot of people are wondering whether or not the UFC might have gotten this wrong. Is Cowboy Cerrone a Hall of Famer? Obviously he was very important to the UFC, but is he a Hall of Fame fighter? So what was your reaction to this? Have you noticed the debate that has been going on social media and other programs as well? Because I honestly, with any Hall of Fame induction, this is the most, debate that I've seen from the UFC Hall of Fame. So outside of like, this person should be in, why aren't they in? What do you think about Cerrone getting in? Have you seen these conversations and debates about it?
I have not seen any of the debates. So interesting. My issue with it, and I don't really have an issue. I think like fundamentally he should be one. Though I agree with Ariel Helwani when he says that like it would just be cooler if there was that 5-year gap. Like let us miss fighters a little bit. In part, that's why Jin's felt so special when he did get announced, because there had been a lot of time to internalize that and be like, oh man, now let's go back and think about Jin's Pulver and all this. And it made it feel more special. Whereas Anderson and Jose getting in is just like, okay, they recently retired. And we all know that they are undeniable first ballot Hall of Famers, but you could let it breathe. You can decant their Hall of Fame careers if it were. So with Cerrone, it's still definitely a lot of that mixed in. There's no reason to have done this so quickly, but it's a little more so. Not because there are other people who deserve it over him, though I think that that's also true. It just feels very weird because doing it so quickly is like so quickly after his retirement makes it feel to some extent like this guy is a no doubt about it, first ballot. In other sports, how that would work. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer, particularly because he's getting inducted with 3 other people. This one really caught me all the way off guard because I just thought the class was set. We already had 3 inductees. That's usually what they're looking at, 2 to 3 people making it in per year. And then we've just added a 4th here sort of quickly. And frankly, a 4th that's a little more errant. That is not like it's undeniable for Jose Aldo, for Anderson Silva, undeniable. Jin's Pulver also should be undeniable. It took him far too long to get in there, but we're talking about a former champion and a true legitimate pioneer of the sport and of the lower weight classes, which is really important for where MMA got. And you've got Donald Cerrone, who I think is a Hall of Fame caliber fighter. I mean, we already did a damn they were good on him when he retired. It was great. He's unbelievably exciting. He holds a bunch of records in the UFC or partial records in the UFC. But at the end of the day, he never won a belt. He never won a major belt, which is a knock on him and kind of, to me, should be like, okay, you don't have to get in immediately. You can wait a year or 2 after the thing just because it's sort of how it feels like. So ultimately, I have no issue with him going in. The timing, again, feels a little weird, but it's all sort of moot. The UFC is just kind of playing this by ear and doing whatever the hell they want. And that's okay. As long as the right people ultimately end up in the hall, then I don't like we're really quibbling about stuff that doesn't matter at that point. So congratulations. It was a great moment on Saturday. It was fun and touching. And if maybe that's just all they were looking for, was just let's add a little juice to this. We'll get this fun, exciting moment. And I'm sure when they do the speeches, he'll have a fairly cool, fairly interesting one because he's lived a very interesting life and can reflect on that pretty well. And so it'll be okay. Nothing to get up in arms about, but I can understand being like, that's a little odd.
Yeah. And like, honestly, the UFC Hall of Fame, like he belongs in there 100%.
Yeah.
Like he has meant so much to the promotion. And I think some people are getting it, it's not the same as like an MMA Hall of Fame. Like the WWE Hall of Fame is what it is, but it's not the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Like the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, there's different names, there's different meanings, there's different things. The WWE Hall of Fame will put in people who meant a lot to the company. And Donald was a integral part of UFC allure. And I think some people are confusing the UFC Hall of Fame with like an overall spectrum of the sport. Like some people look at his record and just be like, well, he's not like a Hall of Fame type of fighter. But for the UFC, he was so important to the company. So like, while Jason Veritek will never be he won't be enshrined in Cooperstown for being a baseball Hall of Famer. He sure as hell is going to be in a Red Sox Hall of Fame and probably have his number retired at Fenway Park. But that's what this means. That's what I thought of this altogether, is like, why is anybody up in arms about this? Because this is a UFC Hall of Fame, and Donald Cerrone was such an important piece to the company. He was the ultimate, I'll take any fight, anytime, against anybody type of dude. And people loved him. Like, I don't understand why there's any quibble about this. But a lot of people kind of confuse the UFC Hall of Fame for like the general sports Hall of Fame, which there is none. There is none of those right now. So the UFC is running this. This is their thing. And Donald Cerrone is a no-brainer, Jed, for a UFC Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I do agree with you that maybe it's a little too soon. Even if you waited one more year, I think it would have a little more weight to it. But still, this is a no-brainer for me. UFC Hall of Fame, Donald Cerrone is a UFC Hall of Famer without a doubt.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he headlined 11 events for Zuffa, right, between WEC and UFC. Fought God knows how many times, like 50 or something. Like I'm with you. He deserves to be in there. I just, if I were in charge, 3 seems like a pretty standard class. We're upping it to 4 for a guy who I think could stand to wait, a year or whatever. And I think of the 4 people, he's under. If I had to cut one, no questions, Donald Cerrone is the guy who doesn't make the cut. But that's sort of the other end of it, is there has never been criteria. There has never been a voting body established like you have largely in other sports. It is, I don't actually know how it is made, but if you were to tell me Dano just picks people, wouldn't shock me at all. Like, that could easily be the criteria to be inducted, is Dana's just like, let's go with these guys. I like them. Sure. And that's not a terrible way to do it. Like, they've mostly got the right people in there. A couple of clear exceptions, but you're going to have that with anything. But it's just, there are no criteria. And so this feels a little more odd, particularly when you're just adding another guy in who's clearly a tier below the other 3 guys that are going in. So, but again, it's fine. There's no limit to how many people can be in this thing. The more, the merrier. I would say yes. Donald Cerrone deserves it, and so it's totally okay for him to be in there. It does not detract from anybody else's admission into it.
100%. Completely agree with you. It is only March, so, and the ceremony is not until July. So are we going to get a fight, Jed? Are we going to get a fight?
We'll definitely get a fight.
What are we going to get? What needs to go in? What's the fight?
Oh, they're really bad at picking fights. So, I mean, they are really bad at it. So that's the thing. I'm not really sure. Because, I mean, we've basically gotten a fight every year, right? See, we got one 13, 15, 16, 18, 19, 21, and 22. So we haven't gotten them every year. A couple of missed years there, which is insane because there are so many fights that should go in here. The thing is, like,
right away.
Well, no, there are 2 fights that I would obviously say should go in there, but they suck at putting fights in. Like, look, I'm not here to really throw shade on Diego Sanchez Cliguida. It's a fun fight. Why is that fight in the Hall of Fame before like 30 other fights? Cub Swanson, Duhor Troy. Great fight. Again, really fun fight. There are 30 other fights that are more meaningful, better, more interesting fights to put in there. Like, they have historically not been super great at it. Hopefully it is one of Robbie Lawler's. Condit will always be my choice. It's the best fight of all time as far as I'm concerned, but I know a ton of people stand for Condit McDonald too. If I'm betting, the UFC would put that fight in over Condit Lawler, but my guess is it's not either of those. It'll be, I'll tell you what fight it is. Here's the fight that will going to be happen, and this ties into the also Donald Cerrone thing. It'll be Joanna and Weili Zhang. It's one of the 5 best fights of all time. They don't have any women's fights in the thing. They probably should. Joanna retired. Joanna should frankly be inducted into the Hall of Fame before Donald Cerrone, but whatever. Again, not relitigating that point. I would bet if I'm betting for a fight, that's the one I bet they throw in.
Yeah, that's one of them. Do you think they would put Ronda Rousey, Liz Carmouche there just because of the historical
They
aspect of it?
should. I mean, that fight should 1,000% be inducted in the Hall of Fame, which I think would make Ronda Rousey the first double inductee. No, Matt Hughes is in there with Frank Trigg.
Yep.
Oh, and Coleman's in. So actually, there are a couple of double inductees in there. So, but I mean, yeah, that fight would be totally fine if that's the fight they chose. Not the most exciting fight in the world, but arguably the second most meaningful fight in the history of mixed martial arts, behind Bonner Griffin 1. So the fight 1,000% should be in.
Congratulations to Cowboy. Well deserved. That's going to be a very interesting watch in July for this Hall of Fame with Aldo and Anderson, and Jens Pulver's speech is going to be amazing. I'm sure Cowboy is going to be incredible as well. So this is a no-brainer. So congratulations to Cowboy Cerrone. No UFC this weekend, Jed, but tomorrow the good old folks at Bellator return to Temecula, California, Bellator 293, the main event, a heavyweight main event. We got Marcelo Golm versus Daniel James. We have a nice, tight 15 fights on this card. We did lose one. We lost the Jaleel Willis-Rustam Kabulov fight. We found that out during weigh-ins today. So 15 fights. Main event, I think a lot of people would agree, is not stealing a lot of headlines, but to me, the rest of this card is pretty damn solid. If you take out the main event, it's like the complete opposite of UFC San Antonio in a lot of respects. So your thoughts on Bellator 293 and their return to Temecula tomorrow?
We were talking about this in the pre-show, and sort of it's just been a thing that's been mentioned sort of around the office, the digital offices all week. A lot of people are higher on this card than I am. This card is extremely mid to me, but I can at least understand the arguments. I do not understand the main event. I understand why it exists. It's a fight between guys that I think are in Bellator's top 10 rankings. And it's a fine fight for what it is. There is no reason that I can find why Kat Zingano is not headlining this. I guarantee you, look, I don't think you're doing a ton any which way you slice this as far as drawing up interest. There is just no name brand value on this card. If there is any, it is in Kat Zingano, and more to the point, she's building towards something. The winner of Golm Daniel James is what are they doing? They're not fighting. They're not about to fight Ryan Bader for the heavyweight title after this. I mean, I guess theoretically they could, but that just doesn't seem like that's in the cards. Whereas Kat Zingano is theoretically being built to be a title challenger for Chris Cyborg, to have that fight, which at this point how long has she been in Bellator? It feels like that fight was teased 3 years ago, and it still just isn't happening. So I know that Cyborg isn't currently under contract, or it's some kind of murky gray area there, but that's the fight you're trying to work towards. So why is this co-headlining? Why is this just not the main event? Just believe in the people you're trying to set it up, because you're not getting a huge ratings bump any way it goes. And ultimately, these are the sorts of events where Bellator loses the plot, because it's not an awful card, but what this is fundamentally is a Challenger Series card. This is, Strikeforce PFL Challenger Series or Dana White Contender Series, like maybe a level up from that. This is Bellator's B offering, but because Bellator doesn't have a structural way to present that, this just becomes part of what Bellator is. As, hey, here's our fastball. Every time we do an event, it's our best go, and this is what it is, man. Like there are developmental prospects, there are okay fights. Nobody's tuning in for this that cares too much, and to me, this is always like this is the biggest hindrance for Bellator. They physically do not have enough people to headline events in meaningful ways, to do their 18 events a year or whatever. They need more stars, more people with names. And so 3 or 4 times a year, you're going to get one of these events. And it's more palatable when it's Bellator Dublin. and everyone just kind of accepts that this is a Dublin card. We're going to do a Dublin thing here. When you're doing it in Temecula, it just reads poorly to me. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if you watch this, I'm sure it won't be awful. Some of the fights are okay, but nobody is building a calendar around this event. Like, gotta stay in, gotta watch this one. Can't watch the Final Four this weekend. Bellator 293 is coming up, and that's just it's where they consistently fumble the bag. Because the rest of this year, to say something nice about them, the rest of this year leading up to this moment, their first quarter has been exceptional. Like, literally A+ work from them. The fights that they put on, the structure, all of the planning that went into it, great. The recent announcement that Pitbull's going for a third belt, great. Like, all of that stuff has been ideal. But then you just have this one, and it kind of puts a downer certainly for at least this weekend, if not for like your general feeling of Bellator.
I just think they should have just done an interim title fight with Katzengeld.
That would be better. That would be
I'm not saying
better.
strip Cyborg because we don't know what's happening. Like, keep the belt on her. I don't have a problem with that. But like, what if Chris doesn't come back? Like, we got to do something to like move this along here somehow. I know there's not a ton of fighters in this division, but you slap a title on here, like, it's something. You know what I mean? But the rest of the card, I actually
honestly,
like.
Bellator should do more interim titles because they're fake and they're stupid, but who cares? And at least, like, maybe you'll trick somebody if you give Marcelo Goldman, Daniel James an interim belt. Or frankly, they should just do different belts instead of interim belts like we've talked about for years. You can have other belts. You can have an intercontinental heavyweight belt or whatever, something dumb and cool. Like, you could have fun with it instead of rolling out this card, which again is not awful. Like, some of these fights are okay, but it's awful at the same time. It is not awful in practice, but it is awful on paper. And that's just where they fall short consistently.
I do like this card, though. I like the Aaron Jeffrey John Salter fight. Aaron Jeffrey could find himself into a title fight if he wins this one. I called Aaron Jeffrey the Chris Curtis of Bellator. How he just needed his chance, and now he's shining. Now that he's got his opportunity, didn't need a qualifier fight.
Why are there 15 fights? Why? That seems entirely unnecessary. Also, like, Joey Davis, good prospect. Can we do something fun with Joey Davis? Give Joey Davis some kind of idiot belt. Who cares? Make one up. Make up a crown. Like, find other way like that. Again, that's been my criticism of Bellator for years. And this also criticism of the UFC, but the UFC is playing with house money, so they can kind of afford it. Like, there are ways to make things that are otherwise uninteresting interesting. That's literally the purpose of promotion. Is in fact to sell the idea of watching this to people. And some of these fights, like you've pointed out, are compelling for reasons, but only if you are deeply in the Bellator game. Not a soul alive gives a shit about John Salter versus Aaron Jeffrey unless you are a deeply invested in the Bellator title picture. But you can package and present this in other ways that are interesting, and that might make me be like, okay, like, this is at least something different. Let's see what this is about. Let's try it out. And instead, the same criticism I've given them year after year, they are running the UFC's playbook without the UFC's roster. And that is a huge flaw in them. I largely think that they are a good promotion. I largely think that they do things well. They don't get out over their skis. That's why they are still relevant year after year after year. But they don't add the little extras, the little panache that could make a card that is otherwise uninteresting for the vast majority of people. Something that maybe I got nothing to do. Maybe on Friday night. This is a Friday card, right?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe Friday night I got nothing else to do. I'll click over to Showtime and peep in and see what's going on, because they have given me something else other than an event headlined by the number 28 and 39th heavyweights in the world, or whatever it is.
You mentioned the Bellator 297 announcements. We got Vadim Nemkov.
Holy shit, it's worse than what I said. according to Tapology, we're looking at 35 and 61 in the heavyweight rankings.
Well, that's not where Vadim Nemkov is ranked. He's going to defend against Yoel Romero. They've rebooked that one.
That
at
fight's
205.
awesome.
Patricio Pitbull challenging Sergio Pettis for the bantamweight title. Obviously, there's history on the line here, but as much as people love this fight, people were kind of scratching their heads a little bit because coming up in like 3 weeks' time, the finale for the bantamweight Grand Prix is going to happen between Rafion Stotts and Patchy Mix. Obviously, the winner will be the interim champion, the $1 million winner, and will obviously be fighting the champion next to unify the belt. So people were kind of puzzled why we're booking another title fight when we have a Grand Prix wrapping up in April. I honestly don't care. Either way, I just think this fight's great, and the winner of Stotts and Mix can get the winner of this, and it's going to be a great fight. But what were your thoughts? How surprised are you to see that Sergio has a title defense? It's not against the Grand Prix winner, and that Patricio Pitbull is the guy looking to become a champion in 3 different divisions for Bellator MMA, trying to make some history.
I didn't see this one coming, but it's cool. Like, this is good matchmaking. I don't give a shit about the Grand Prix stuff. Like, this is really good. As an addendum to this, this is also another problem for Bellator. If you're running a Grand Prix, that you need to run that Grand Prix in the year that you're running it and not have it bleed over into first, second quarter of the next year, because then it's like, oh, kind of forgot we were even doing a Bantamweight Grand Prix, in part because like the Stott Sabatello felt like it obviously wasn't the final, but they are the 2 most vocal guys that felt like it could have just been the final. And instead there's just been this kind of still dragging on, still waiting to close it down, which they seem to consistently do with these. And that's a tough scene, but who gives a shit? Because this is a good fight. Like, the Pitbull Pettis fight is compelling and interesting, and I will tune in to watch that fight. And then sure, the winner of Stotts Mix can get the winner of that fight into a small little 4-man tournament, basically. And it will be great. Like, you should not err promotionally. You should not err on the side of, well, we've got this thing going. Like, just make cool fights and let the rest of it settle out. Like, that should just always sort of be the answer. The UFC honestly used to do this more. Now they are in this sort of weird thing, but it's like, hey, you know what you should do? Just always make the coolest fights you can right now. And we'll figure out the rest of it later, because we should be living in the moment. And this fight's awesome. I'm going to tune in. This was honestly the best thing they did the whole first quarter of this year, which was again a good quarter. Good things happened and accomplished and were booked and fought, and it's like, oh, I have something to look forward to now. Not a nebulous Grand Prix, which again, the lightweight Grand Prix is a great idea, but it's a little harder to like I'm looking forward to too many composite parts. This is just like, yeah, that event's going to be sick. I'm super excited to tune in and watch. And Bellator needs as many of those as they can. As many things that make me say, hell yeah, let's tune in and watch this. That's what Bellator needs to consistently be pursuing.
That event will be happening in Chicago, Illinois in June. Looking very much forward to that. But this Saturday, not far from Chicago, in Milwaukee in Algonquin, which means the good land. Thank you, Wayne's World and Alice Cooper, for that tidbit of information. Gamebred Boxing 4 is going down in Milwaukee, big arena. Obviously, Jorge Masvidal's promotion. Roy Jones Jr. versus Anthony Pettis is the main event. We have Vitor Belfort versus Jacare, a rematch. Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stevens, a rematch. We have other notable names from the MMA world. Pearl Gonzalez fighting Gina Mazzani. We have B. Wynn versus Andy Wynn. Joe Riggs, the great Joe Riggs, who should be fighting Jake Paul right now,
the fight master himself.
Fighting Marcus Perez and, in some other fights on this card. So this is going down Saturday. You can watch it on ppv.com. You can order it through UFC Fight Pass. $50 for this. If you go on the website, Ticketmaster, doesn't look like the ticket sales are going great. It seems like I don't know. I love the concept. I love it. Love what they're trying to do here. Trying to get some fighters paid, give them some different opportunities. Love it. Tough weekend to do it, and tough location, if we're being honest. Like, somewhere in Orlando, somewhere near Miami, somewhere in Florida. I just felt like Milwaukee was just such a weird place to host this event. But hey, I'm not a promoter. Who the hell am I? But where are your excitement levels for this? We're 48 hours away. What are we thinking, Jed?
Oh, come on, man. I'm the wrong guy to ask. This is fine. I like you. The general idea is interesting, maybe not compelling, but certainly interesting. You got a lot of names to try and grab attention, and unclear that they are accomplishing that. But at the end of the day, there are a couple it strikes that note where I've never once thought about Roy Jones Jr. boxing Anthony Pettis. So that's interesting because it's at least something that I had never even conceived of. Is it something I care about though? And the answer is not really. Roy Jones is really old, but he's a professional boxer. Anthony Pettis is not a great boxer in general, was much better at kicking things, and that's not going to happen here. He's probably just going to get tuned up. But and if he doesn't, then it won't be cool. It will be sad. Like if Anthony Pettis wins this, it will just be sad because it's him beating up an old man. That's a tough hang. The co-main event, that's at least more interesting in the fact that it's two guys of the same size and the same era, and Jacare hits really hard, even though he's not really a boxer. Vitor obviously much better in that realm. Again, it's kind of sad either way that fight goes. Probably the Jose Aldo Jeremy Stephens fight, I'm really like, that's actually something that's very interesting and compelling to me, just because their mixed martial arts fight was fun, and Jose Aldo, liver shotted him out of the cage, and he can totally do that. But Jeremy Stephens is, better served, I would imagine, in this than in an MMA fight against Jose Aldo. So fight's actually like genuinely interesting, and the rest of it's, I don't know. The biggest issue with this event for me, Mike, the reason I probably won't be watching is because I don't know if you know this. Saturday is a busy day in combat sports. We've got Gamebred Boxing. I mean, and just in regular sports, we'll have the Final Four, which I'll be watching. But most importantly,
PFL
incorrect. Fight Circus is back, baby. I cannot tell you who's on PFL's fight card without looking it up right now. But I can tell you the Fight Circus is back. Phuket, Thailand, doing the thing again. And look, maybe I'm a goon. I might be. Like, I'm not here to tell you I'm some sophisticated, consumer of fine art. But Fight Circus has been consistently the most entertaining non-UFC organization I've watched. And sometimes that even includes the UFC in it. And they know how to make – look, here's Bellator. You can't do a lot of this stuff because you can't for brand reasons, and I understand it. But, Mike, have you looked at the lineup for Fight Circus this weekend?
No, I was actually going to let you shout it out by the end of this.
Let me tell you, I have the lineup right here. And it's great. We're looking at 12 fights. Fights is maybe a loose term for some of the things that are going to be happening. But the main event is obviously the draw. It's Siamese boxing. If you don't know what Siamese boxing is honestly one of the best things Fight Circus has actually produced two products that I think are legitimately good and entertaining. One of them is the kicking only fights. Human cockfighting is what they call it. Those fights are always electric because it's just really fun to watch people kick the crap out of each other. And the other, Siamese boxing, is like, instead of doing power slap, Dana White should be invested in Siamese boxing because this thing could have real legs. It is, you basically put two dudes in a big shirt and they each get to use one arm and they box somebody else doing the same thing. And that is actually a concept that could be iterated on and built into a real thing because it's hilarious and engaging the few times it's happened. And in this one, they've paired Quentin Rampage Jackson and Bob Sapp up as one half, and they're fighting John Nutt and a dude named Woody, who also just like works with the fights, the two Fight Circus guys. So one, you're getting to watch Bob Sapp and Quentin Jackson actually physically fist fight their fight promoter. Dana White, once upon a time was talking about maybe fist fighting Tito Ortiz. That never ended up happening. But Bob Sapp and Rampage, they're about to fight John Nutt in this carnival explosion of whatever it is. It's gonna be great because it's always great. They're making fun of the Power Slap League. They're doing that. They're doing a musical chairs thing where you get a bunch of people and they play musical chairs, and then the losers have to fight each other, basically, which is a great idea. MMA Symmetrical is back 2-on-1 fighting. So I've got the presser in front of me right now. It's Walter John Veal versus the two people who win musical chairs. So they'll play it out and all the losers will end up fighting each other. And the last two people who get chairs will then fight a 2-on-1 fight. Blindfolded Muay Thai. That's a thing that's about to happen on Saturday. That can't be good for anybody's health, but I will watch that like I will watch a train wreck for sure. The Wheel of Violence, which we've talked about a bunch just in general as being a good idea of just spinning a wheel and then competing under whatever the rule sets are there. The Human Pinata, which I don't really understand what it is, but the pitch is basically Steve Panda Banks, who's a Fight Circus legend of the circus, Panda Banks, is fighting 6 dudes. I'm not sure if they're all at once or how it goes, and there will be some other things, but you got that. It's the best goonish entertainment this sport can offer. And I'm a firm believer that the roots of MMA are in carnival sideshow shit, and that we get a little too serious about things at points in time. And at Fight Circus is a lot of it's awful. I'm not here to tell you that it's all winners, but it's all fantastic, even when it's terrible. And so 1,000%, if I'm picking one of these things to watch, also Fight Circus costs like $5 on Fight TV. I do not know what the pay-per-view for Masvidal boxing is, but I cannot imagine it's, yeah. If I got to choose between $50 for Gamebred Boxing or $5 on Fight TV for Fight Circus, I know exactly which one of those I'm buying.
Yeah, it's well said. Yeah, it's a tough weekend. Final Four. We got PFL. We got Fight Circus. We got WrestleMania. There's just so much going on.
They do that Saturday night now too, don't they?
Mania? Yeah, it's both nights, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, jeez. I mean, yeah, what you picked a really bad weekend for this, Jorge. And can we talk about that? We didn't ever talk about this, Mike. We never talked about this on air. Come on, man. Come on. You're not even going to show up to your own event. You're not even going to show up to your own event. When he told Ariel that he was not going to be in Milwaukee for Gamebred Boxing, I was like, I don't know what we're doing here, man. Like you gotta show up for your own. I know you have a fight. Frankly, you shouldn't have picked this weekend anyway, based on all the stuff we just said you're competing against, and it being a week before your fight, so you can't even go. If you aren't willing to go to the fight that you're promoting, why should I? That's my question. That was a tough scene to hear him say that.
From what I hear, there will be sort of like a live, I don't know if it's like a watch along, but like a live chat option during the pay-per-view, and Masvidal will be on the broadcast talking about it. So at least he will be there as part of the broadcast in some way. But yeah, I thought that was...
Dude, you got to go and sign autographs and get people in the door. Tough scene.
I will say, I don't think there's anybody better than him when it comes to that, because I've obviously covered some of the icon cards that were in Savannah. Yeah. Masvidal is, he is the best when it comes to that. He will stand there and literally talk to every single person in that building and sign all their stuff and take pictures with everybody. There's 3,000 people there. He will sit and wait and talk to all 3,000 of them. It's pretty cool.
And that's perfect. And like, that's what you need if you're trying to build something. And that's kind of my overarching thought about Gamebred Boxing is like the icon stuff seems to be going well. Like from everything I've heard, that he is successful with it and kind of advancing that and where he wants to go. And this is a huge swing. And it's honestly, my biggest takeaway from this is I hope that this is frankly an overswing. He is out over his skis at this point in time. Like there's no way that this thing makes money. I just cannot imagine it possibly could. My great hope is that this is not an affliction style event where you're trying to make so much noise that you forget best practices. And when it fails, then you just recede from it and don't do it. Because I do think largely the concept of doing something like this is good and we need it. But we have just seen historically people take this exact path forward and it has never once succeeded. And I don't think it's going to work here. And I just go back to building from the ground up. That's just a way better way to go about this stuff.
Yeah, that was one of my whole things is like, look, you got to start somewhere. And even if, the numbers aren't what you are hoping they will be, you can't stop, because I think they have something with the concept. And I think the initial announcement got some buzz and attention, but yeah, it's just a tough weekend. You'll learn from it. I think $50 is a little too much. I mean, the PFL pay-per-view is $50 and we were ragging on that. I think 50 is a little too high. Cut that in half, I think you'd be a little somewhere with it.
Better.
I mean,
Let me ask you a question, Mike.
The BKFC card coming up in April is $50 too. So
that's where I wanted to go. Let me ask you this, Mike, because this is sort of another angle I thought of this is BKFC. It feels like this is BKFC's lane. It's obviously a little bit different because it's bare knuckle, but a lot of what they have done has been to captivate, draw eyeballs, draw interest with a different thing. Bare knuckle is different, but using people that etc. Do you think that Gamebred Boxing can have a similar success to that? Or do you think that, because I'm not sure, kind of feels like honestly bare knuckle is enough of a twist and also like a macabre captivation that will just inherently draw more eyeballs than let's just put boxing match on with some MMA fighters, which I'm not sure. I still don't know how much leeway this has.
it's interesting because, I mean, BKFC, what's so compelling about BKFC is that, one, the events are super fun to watch. Two, they go by so quickly. And three, they know who they are and they like go all in on it. And like they know how people view them.
They're very well run promotion. They are a very well run promotion.
They know what they're doing. But also on top of that, they have had plenty of time to put on these massive. Do you remember when the Artem Lobov Paulie Malignaggi fight happened? Mm-hmm. That was like, that's it. This is the peak. It's never going to get better than this for BKFC. This is the beginning of the end. They're going to start to plummet downhill. And here they are all these years later. And it's like, they've made mistakes. They've been able to learn from those mistakes. And then they just have accepted who they are and how people view them. And they just do that. They just go all in on it. Now, I do think there is a place for Gamebred Boxing because like a lot of these fighters who want to box, like don't necessarily want to go to BKFC. They don't want to go in there, but sometimes they're just BKFC is just throwing out this incredible amount of money. And you're just like, well, how can I possibly say no to this? So at least they're creating a different alternative where if you don't want to do MMA, but still go into boxing, you potentially have somewhere to go. And this is a compelling idea. My one fear is not BKFC. My fear is if Dana White goes through with this boxing thing, because this is what it's going to look like. If Dana sees this and he's like, all right, this is pretty cool. And he jumps on a similar concept of doing MMA fighters, past and present, boxing each other, and they put that promotional buzz behind it and that promotional team behind it, what does that do for this idea of Gamebred Boxing? Now, it is on UFC Fight Pass, and maybe those two calamities can work together someday. Maybe that could happen. But that was like one of my things, like, well, this thing goes really well. Like, what's to stop Dana from being like, well, we've been talking about Zuffa boxing for 6 years. I guess he recently did something saying like a year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm going to try to do something. What's to stop Dana from being like, oh, I like this concept, but I'm going to take this and do it better and put my entire UFC promotional team behind it. So I don't know. Maybe I have no idea how this is going to go.
Power slap. He decided to pivot resources to power slap instead of making a boxing product.
Maybe he'll pivot back. I don't know. I mean, he's all in now, but I don't know. I think there's something to this. It's just a matter of this is going to be a big time learning experience. Like how big of a building can we do this in? When can we do it? How is scheduling going to work? Milwaukee doesn't seem to be the type of city to do this in. Should we be more Florida based? Should we do this? Is the price point too high? Are the arenas too big to host it? Like, this is going to be a very important event for them, not just because of the dollars and the cents that it makes. It's what they take away from it so that they can improve upon the next one. And because I think the name value is, the name value is really good. Like, even some of the undercard fights, there are known fighters who are, and shout out to the fighters, they are promoting the shit out of this card on their social medias. Like, I can't go anywhere on any social media without Pearl Gonzalez or B-Win or any of the other undercard fighters just promoting this everywhere on social media. So they are doing a good job doing that. This is going to be a very pivotal learning experience for them. Like, if this doesn't go as well as it's, I don't think they're going to make a lot of money. Like you said, I just think it's a really tough weekend for it to happen. A week away from the UFC pay-per-view, we got all these other sporting events happening. Like, they could have waited 2 weeks and done this. They could have done it April 15th. I know you have the Holloway Allen card, but at least that's an option, and that's
fine.
There. Yeah, it would have been.
That would have been
and then
fine.
You get 2 Apex cards coming up. Yeah. And then you get 2 Apex cards coming up on the 22nd and the 29th. I know you're dealing with BKFC with one of those dates, but yeah, I think they're going to hopefully they could take lessons from this and continue on and not just do a one and done with this type of process. And this is going to be a pivotal weekend for them. I don't think they're going to sell at the building. I don't think they're going to sell a ton of pay-per-views here at that price point, but hopefully they can create enough buzz so that, because I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to be covering it. So, and I'm excited to watch it. Like, that's my role for Saturday, and I'm excited to do so. But not everyone's covering that event. So what's to say, you know what, I'm going to drop $50 on this when I could watch the Final Four for free, or I could watch Fight Circus for $5, or watch the PFL card on ESPN Plus or wherever that's going to be broadcast. So yeah, or WrestleMania for $5. You could spend $5 to get both nights of WrestleMania. So it's just a tough weekend. It's a tough location. The price point's a little high, but again, this is something they can learn from. I do like the concept, and I don't think BKFC is like really competition for them. I mean, maybe in some ways, but I think BKFC is just kind of on, like, they are their own thing right now, and Gamebred Boxing can kind of be their own thing. If they can keep things where there's a lot of MMA related competitors and known in that space boxing against each other, but we'll see.
Last question, loosely related. Why doesn't he just change icon to Gamebred MMA? It feels like that's just the move forward here, because that just has to be better, right? Like, and then this can just be part of an entire promotional organization instead of Gamebred Boxing's over here, Icon FC's over here. Feels like it would be better for him to have this all unified, and like, maybe you do some MMA fights and some boxing fights, and then you can do MMA in a ring, which God knows Casey loves, and so do a very ardent section of MMA fans. So it feels like we should just do this. Am I crazy?
Well, he has a Gamebred FC. It's the bare knuckle MMA league that he does. So that's already there, but Icon has his name attached. It's not Icon FC. It's Jorge Masvidal's Icon FC. Yeah. So the branding is still there, but yeah, I don't know what's going on with Gamebred FC, honestly.
I don't remember Gamebred FC at all. So that shows you where I'm at on this particular topic, I guess.
But I mean, look, it gets fighters opportunities, and I'm all down for that. And hopefully they're making great money and they want to do it again. They're treated so well that they want to come back and do it again. And by all accounts, people I've spoken to, they do a good job with that. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a box office success by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to start somewhere, and it's going to start for them on Saturday, April 1st with Gamebred Boxing 4. And let's see how this all plays out. So I think we're done, Jed. Is there anything else you want to say? I mean, you wax poetically on Fight Circus, but I would love to hear if you have any more thoughts about anything.
I need to correct. It's actually $10 for the standalone pay-per-view on fight.tv. If you're already like a fight person, I think it's like $8 because that's their like subscription thing. But so it's $10, which is still $10, and I'm for sure giving that same money. I own a Fight Circus t-shirt, so I'm obviously going to give them $10 to watch old school MMA, Mike. I didn't even mention it. One of the first fights is a single 10-minute MMA round. They're bringing it back to the roots, baby. It's going to be a great time. You should watch Fight Circus this weekend, guys. They don't pay me to say this. I just genuinely love their product because it's insane, and the sport needs more insane things.
Is it NHB or is it gloves? Like normal rule set?
I don't know. I'm going to assume that it's gloves, but also
Still.
I don't know rules. It could be anything, Mike. There's not a commission that's really
spin the wheel, baby. Spin
here.
that wheel.
Yeah. They're doing blindfolded Muay Thai. I'm not sure that anybody is actually checking to make sure that everything's on the up and up here. We're just going and we're hanging, and this is the promotion that if you and your buddies got drunk one night and were like, we should make a fight promotion, and then you woke up and like followed through, that's what Fight Circus is, and it's delightful.
Oh man. Well, I mean, with that said, there's not much more we can add to that to put the show over the top. I think we're out of the red zone. We've crossed the threshold. Touchdown BTL. We've gotten it done. We're on the board. And next week, we will recap all of this action, and we will get you ready for UFC 287. Their promotions return to Miami, Florida. First time in almost pretty much 2 decades that they're back in Miami. We got Pereira versus Adesanya for the middleweight title. We got Burns versus Masvidal. We will have a watch party. Connor Burks, shout out to GC. He sent me over the cold open video for UFC 287 that I need to voice over for the watch party. This is going to be, I'm going to say it. This will be the greatest cold open in MMA history. I mean, it is so good. I had goosebumps this morning when I watched it. And I'm like, I cannot wait to voice this thing over on Friday. So get ready for that. We'll get you ready for UFC 287. I'm going to try to get a special guest on, a fan favorite of BTL for next week's show. We're in discussions. We'll see if we can make it happen. Hopefully we'll have more on this Fury FC situation. There's a lot happening behind the scenes here. So hopefully by the time we're back here, we can talk about that a little bit more. And then it's time to see if Jorge Masvidal can put a wrinkle into Dana White's plans. Let's see if Israel Adesanya can get his title back. That 287 main card is friggin' awesome. That whole card is pretty damn good. So looking forward to that. Yes. Casey, you could hit the music. We are done. We will have a weekend preview show coming up in a little while, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we'll just talk about all about this weekend. We'll probably take a lot of fan questions too, because there's so much going on. We'll see where your interests are peaked. So for Jed Bashu, Casey on the 1s and 2s, I am Mike Heck. Thank you very much. Back next week on BTL. Good night, everybody.
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.